Hello everybody, welcome back to From Rhythm to Algorithm, part something, continuing on right where we left off. So a lot of logic today. I want to review the derivation of the shell theorem, in addition to review Hooke's law once again. Basically, Hooke's law establishes what is effectively a tension path, and then there's really some intuition I just want to reconsider and go through about deriving the shell theorem. Why does the effect of gravity go from a inverse square law to a linear proportion? And so we'll do that in a separate video, but mostly logic today. We'll briefly touch on that, but that will be there won't be any homework. But that's what we'll cover next. I'll do a separate video on why Hooke's law is intimately related to the shell theorem, and just explore that logic. But mainly logic, some physics, mathematics, and linguistics in every episode. So I want to start with a statement, and I want you to answer the question. A city is a site. How do you spell site? We've kind of touched on this before, site with an S versus site with a C. Again, obviously analogous to, or working through the logic of sensorality with a C versus sensorality with an S. But, right, site, a specific case we use, citation, right, that comes with a C. So if you said a citation, that references, right, a shortening citation would be site with a C. So a city is a site with an S. Is it? Right? A city, but if you just say that and put a site with a C, that would be like a citation. That would be the consistency would be to the C with a citation. But then if you said a city is a site with an S, then it's like, okay, a site, okay, but can we connect that to a phrase? A city is a site to see, right? Like see, visuals. And so site, S-I-G-H-T, is the same as S-I-T-E, right? And same with, it's the same logical conundrum or presentation of night, N-I-G-H-T, and night, N-I-T-E. And so, but again, clearly the C and the S is a pairing that differentiates directly with sensorality. But a spectacle is a sight to see. So that's just a logical conundrum that struck me as, again, what is the correct thing there and why? What else can we say? A site, S-I-T-E. Well, if we take away the E, we have a verb, a verb, sit, to sit. Right, I'm sitting in my chair, right? Sitting is vibrating, right? I'm not moving. Sitting is not moving. But city, S-I-T-Y. And so, like, now we can just, analyze that as our generality. Y adds generality. I'm sitting, I'm city. Like, it's like sitting, like if I'm happy or if I'm pool table E, like a pool table, I'm pool table E. I'm sit-y, I'm sitting. And so we've defined city, S-I-T-Y, as like sitting. As literally sit with Y at the end, but generalizing the logic of what it means to sit. Just super nuanced, but it presented itself. But a center does not have a physical opposite. Or you can say a center is a site. A center is a physical location. We'll get away from the word site for a second. And so a center is a physical location. And they'll say, there's no center of the universe. Just directly flip that logic. What is the opposite of a center? It doesn't have one. And so we've flipped that logic. Why did we do that? I'm not exactly sure, but it's true, and it's certainly a theorem. It's certainly proven. A center does not have an opposite, a physical location that's opposite of a center. That is definite, unique. A center does not have an opposite. And so we'll just put that on the screen and move on. Juxtaposition compares dichotomy. Again, we keep talking about these dichotomistic pairs. We just take two words of any form, whether it's in a complete generality or some level of specificity, and we're just saying these words are related. Again, I do that instinctually and intuitively, and so do most people, but clearly I do it at a little different level or something. But it pairs what is juxtaposition is the acts of comparison. But what is dichotomy? Right? Because if you compare something, right, you have the phrasing comparing and contrasting. It's kind of like the natural opposites that society presents. Right? You're comparing and contrasting. Well, they're not really natural opposites. Think about the words. If you compare something, right? If you say something is contrasting, it's antithetical. It is against. It is negatively connotated. It is opposite. It is dissimilar. But if you're comparing, it doesn't necessarily say if it's similar or not similar. It just says that you're comparing two things. All right. So dichotomy is kind of the state of comparing two things. If it's dichotomistic, you're comparing two things to come to one word. Right. Dichotomistic pairing. You take two words and then they're related through another word. So that is where the logical why I use the term dichotomisticality is, because I'm sure you've never heard that word anywhere else. But it's logically consistent. And so what is contrast? But again, compare and contrast are not logical opposites. Comparing doesn't have any sort of connotation as positive or negative. Or if you're contrasting to something, it's clearly a negative connotation or showing something that is not a similarity. Reality is natural. Again, we've shown the form of reality is literally a linguistical, like it's a prefix and a suffix. It's literally bounding a word. So that, again, it plays into our forms of the solutions. Again, it is what it is, the general reduction form. This is to that, what that is to this. The logical connection form, the connecting statement, and then sensorality is our specific solution. And we've already derived and proven the existence and solidified the axiom of speciality. All right, we've gone through that extensively. And so to give analogy as to how I do this proofing in terms of like the final result, it's like if you wanted to move. Like I just moved from my house, we'll use that example. Let's say you're in an apartment and you have to move, right? So the big overarching goal is you have to move. But now let's say you can move, right? If you rush really quickly and just take all your stuff out and damage the walls and don't repair anything, you're not going to get your security deposit back. But if you clean up your apartment really well, you get all of your money back. If you clean up your apartment a little bit, you get some of the money back. And so these proofings are done where it directly shows the next extension to the axiom. So this, carrying on with the analogy, this is like if you left the apartment and you didn't clean everything. You replaced the refrigerator, replaced the microwave, replaced the cabinetry, did the electrical, did the plumbing, did everything yourself, and better. And so what was I saying in terms of the level of quality of proofing toward the analogy of cleaning the apartment? It's like you're redoing literally everything and leaving it better than you found it, so it would be as easy as possible for the next person to continue the proof. And so this is it's literally as poignantly as you could prove an axiom, which again nobody's ever proven an axiom before. Well, not in a long time or documented, but ever. I would be able to tell you if they could. And certainly not sensorality. But speciality had been proven. But that's why the word special existed. But culture is special. Speciality and sensorality, again, sensorality has to contain all of the logic of speciality. But because chronology exists. Whether I'm writing this, I have a bunch of realizations and I put them into a little episode. I pretty much they're just notes and then I freestyle, so I'm looking at the camera directly most of the time. But the point is things happen sequentially. They happen in order. So there is order to things, believe it or not. But point being is, I'll write something down and then I'll come back to it, and then I'll write it down over here after going to somewhere else. But there's an order to all of these things, and I can only best show you the end results. And again, like I said, it contains the logic. You're not going to miss anything, but it'd be way more useful if I can show you every step, but I can't. It's like physically it's impossible. Even if you watch me continuously all day, every day. But events happen in sequence even if you're brainstorming. And so again, just to point out, I'm not going to try to extend the logic, but things happen in order. But what is coherence? Logic is coherent, so what is it physically? Right? Coherence is resonance. And the phrasing people would say is if something that resonates with me. It's literally, if you're scintillating an atom, if you're creating a frequency, if you're vibrating, that vibrating makes the momentum of the electron jump up an orbital, or if you're literally vibrating your vocal cords and making somebody's brain think, and to get on the same frequency, on the same wavelength, you're resonating. That's physically what is occurring. So if you're saying the words, that resonates with me, you're in agreement. That is where agreement comes from. And disagreement is dissident. Or not dissident, or cognitive dissonance, dissonance. But It's fundamentally and empirically true. So again, when you do an empirical physical proof, you literally effectively the words are moot. They're rendered useless by observation. You literally just say, look, here's this. That's clearly true. And people are like, oh yeah. Now, when you do that in the context of theory, of meaning a bunch of other physicists, Einstein, Newton, Bohr, Joe from down the street, they all did physics, they all did intuition, and they tried to articulate that. And so what you're doing is by proving that there aren't any fundamental paradoxes, is you're showing where people have basically contracted logic, where people have basically put a logical band-aid, that being a word, and saying dark energy or dark matter. Then you bust through that band-aid and you say, here's the fundamental ontological words we use to describe these things. Work, rhythm, vibration, tension, entropy. You know, a lot of the words we already do use, but now we've just added more. And so that's very, very poignant. Simply stated, chronology exists, but things happen in order. That's why we're always trying to maximize order. But that is literally why that's a good little connection from logic to physics. And so, but reality is natural. I did some logical extensions there. But culture is special, right? Connecting sensuality, life, to speciality, right? Differentiation in general to the desire. Again, remember we connected sensuality, our operative word is now desire. But what is desire? More basically, want. Or you have wants and needs. So if you want something, you desire something. So sensuality, wants. But culture is special. We've connected that. Life has culture. Culture is special. My rock is not going to have a bar mitzvah. And I'm not Jewish, so I'm just making an example. But if you watch any of these things and you get offended by anything I say, fuck you, I do not care at all. But sensuality with a C does not have culture. Just extending our logic, again, that's our end goal, is to solidify this definition, and we're just pointing out and making logical deductions about all of these empirical facts, and stuffing it all together as best we can.